Hey, welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and Giallo enthusiasts. This is Tanner Leeser, your host for all things Giallo, here on The King and Giallo, and it's time for another unscripted talking head movie review. This is the third Giallo film by Silvio Amadio, Amuck, 1972, and where do I begin? So this is one that I covered in the Forgotten Giallo Film Series, episode 23, 1972, part 2. I'm going to say it right here. This should not be a Forgotten Giallo film. I will probably be giving this a Jolly Tally in the future, but as of right now, I just don't really have time to fit it into the schedule, but I will go back and cover this one because it really does deserve it. So I will go through what I enjoy about this movie. I will give you a rundown of the plot, such things like that, and I will also do a little bit of comparisons, compare and contrast with his previous Giallo films, and then I still have his forthcoming one to watch. His fourth one, but I have not seen it at the time, but it will be the next Jolly Tally, so that is fun. But okay, so real quick, this is the plot according to IMDb. The secretary of a writer and his wife investigates the disappearance of her lover, their previous secretary, and finds herself the target of the couple's erotic desires and a murder plot, which, that's essentially it. It's funny because some of the posters for this movie say something about how the guy would kidnap women and make them his toys, and it's like, that's really not accurate. That's not accurate at all, but you gotta sell tickets, so why not? So this movie stars Barbara Bouchet is the main character, Greta Franklin, and then the man she's working for and trying to find out if he's tied to her friend's disappearance is played by Farley Granger of Hitchcock fame. His wife is played by Rosalba Neri, so it's Richard Stuart and Eleanora Stuart. And then along with them is Umberto Raho plays Giovanni, their butler. And then Sally, the missing girl, is played by Patrizia Viotti, who was seen previously in Death Falls Lightly. She was actually in, I think, 3 or 4 Giallo films in 1972, and then I think she got in trouble with drugs and the law and such, or maybe that was a little later, but anyways. There's also Dino Mele. I think that's how you say it. I could be completely wrong, and I probably am, but he plays Sandro. And then we have a guy, Petar Martinovic as Rocco, and Nino Segurini as Commissioner Antonelli. And that's about it. Yeah, this is written by Silvio Amadio, and the music is by Teo Usueli. Okay, so I'll be really brief here with my comparison for Amuck with Assassination in Rome and No Man's Island. God, that movie has so many titles. It's one of those movies where you're like, okay, so what is the title? It's kind of like Bay of Blood and Twitch of the Death Nerve. Some people will go for both, but it seems to be Bay of Blood is the more popular one. I'm getting off. Anyways, so real quick, with Amuck, Silvio Amadio really seems to have found his footing, not just that, but also his style. Assassination in Rome is very pedestrian. There's not really any shots that really jump out to me as being memorable. I do remember sequences in the movie. I do remember how some things are shot, but nothing was really inspired. It just felt like almost kind of felt like a TV movie, but that is proto-Giallo, very, very early, so it's not really super deep in the genre of what we consider a Giallo film to be, but it is a Euro spy, a little bit of a crime thriller mystery. Sure, we'll include it. And then No Man's Island kind of goes in the opposite direction, whereas this one was very conservative. This one is a little bit more, dare I say, progressive in terms of doing things that, it's like your grandparents might watch Assassination in Rome. They probably wouldn't like No Man's Island. That's where I'm kind of going with that. It's way more leaning on the erotica side. And the way it is shot is more creative, but still not quite there. Amuck easily outdoes it in the first 15-20 minutes, both of those movies, in terms of how it is shot. But yeah, it's he kind of abandons anything from Assassination in Rome, but he keeps the erotica from No Man's Island and really dials it up. This is, again, not another one of those Giallo films that's very indicative of the genre, of what most people come to expect from the genre. The one movie that this reminds me of, again, that some people will say is a Giallo, some people say is Giallo adjacent, I go ahead and throw it in there, why not, is The Laughing Woman. both are very similar in terms of a woman going to work for this mysterious, powerful man, but she's going under a pretense. She's actually there with a motive. And we don't know that right away for both of them. So I'll give you a quick rundown of the plot for Amuck. Well, I'll try to be as fast and thorough as I can. So it opens with beautiful shots of Venice as Greta is being boated to this villa. And the way it is shot, again, so Assassination in Rome, there was a lot of shots of Rome that just kind of felt forced. Kind of felt like they slowed the movie down just to be like, look at the Colosseum, isn't that pretty? And No Man's Island, a little bit with the beautiful landscapes, but it really actually set the mood, set the tone a little bit. With this movie, it's seamless the way it is done. It doesn't feel like, okay, I get it, it's Venice, move on. It really feels like it's setting up this story, and we're in Venice, but he lives sort of in this isolated villa, like on an island, I think. I mean, because they had to get there via a boat. I don't know exactly, but opening credits are really great, is what I'm trying to say. He gets there, or she gets there. The boat goes to leave. There's this great shot where the camera is looking at Greta through the bars of the gate, and you see the boat taking off. And the shot reminds me of Hitchcock. It reminds me of something you might see in, like, The Birds. Great shot. She comes in. She meets Eleanora. Eleanora is like, come on in. Richard's gone, but he'll be back. And so we kind of jump forward a little bit, and Greta is beginning her work, which, as the secretary for this man who is a writer, she's writing down what his ideas are. So he'll record them on a recorder, and then she's listening to the tape as he's reciting what he wants, and she's typing it, which I always think is so funny. It's like, you couldn't do that yourself, but sure. Well, Richard comes in, and they meet, and he's played by Farley Granger. He's a very handsome man, and there's a little bit of this kind of a starstruck, like, oh, and then it's, well, what were you expecting? Some monster, I presume? And there's an interesting bit where he says that he knows what he wants. And see this nail right here? I put that nail in 5 years ago, and it was all for this piece of art. And he puts it up, and he talks about the artist, and he was born in 14 whatever. And then she says, and died, and he goes, nonsense. And he says something like that, like a true artist never dies. Interesting. Okay, so we learn that they send the butler away every night. He lives somewhere else because he doesn't trust any of the help. He doesn't trust the butler. He believes he might be eavesdropping on him, but she's allowed to stay. And so later she is doing the same thing. She's sitting at the desk, writing, listening to the recordings. But there is a man now meeting with Richard. This is Commissioner Antonelli. And you get the vibe, or you get the sense that he is looking for a missing woman, the previous secretary. He believes, he's implying that there might be foul play, because, as he says, girls like that just don't disappear without a word for no reason. Greta is listening into this, and then the butler sees her eavesdropping, and I just thought that was kind of funny, because it's like, that's what they're accusing you of doing. Anyways, so she goes out to the city with Eleanora. Eleanora says, I'll meet you back here in 2 hours. And while Greta is alone and kind of running some chores, she meets the commissioner, and she asks him about the investigation, and she mentions that she's friends of Sally. They've been really good friends going back for a very long time. They used to live together for a while, and she was writing Greta periodically while she was here in Venice, but eventually the letters became less frequent, and the most recent one she received, coincidentally, was right before around the time when she went missing. And he reads it, and it's being narrated in presumably Sally's voice, and it's the way this is shot is great. It's just showing like different shots of the water of the canal. Just you see the reflections in the water of the buildings. Very, very well done. And later that night, Greta is getting undressed, getting ready for bed, and opens the windows, and there's this hulking guy standing there. Freaks her out. Stuart comes in, and is like, what's going on? And she tells him, oh, I saw this huge man. He scared me. And they're like, oh, that's Rocco. Don't worry. He's a fisherman. He lives nearby. And Eleanora gives her a sedative, I believe. And, seeing her to bed. And this is where we get our first sexy scene. This is the infamous slow motion lesbian scene where Eleanora is kind of being touchy with Greta, and then takes her robe off, and then takes Greta's robe off, and they're kind of kissing and kind of being touchy, and it's a good scene. And then later we follow Greta as she's kind of snooping through the house, and she's listening in on Stuart and Eleanora, and they've got friends over, and she tries to rush back to bed, but Eleanora is there, and she's like, oh, you couldn't sleep. Well, why don't you come up and join us? And so she does, and they're basically having a party. Well, they give her alcohol. She meets Sandro, who's kind of being touchy with her. You very quickly get the sense that Richard and Eleanora are possibly swingers, and their friends are very, well, for lack of a better word, they're very free-spirited with their sexuality, with who they're touching, all that. There's a word there, I just can't think of what it is. But anyways, as this night goes on, they put on a stag film. They put on an old school adult movie, and it is an adult version of Little Red Riding Hood. So you got the Little Red Riding Hood going down, and you got this guy who, I don't know if he's supposed to be the wolf or the hunter. I guess he's supposed to be the wolf, but he just looks like a guy. But he chases her, rips her clothes off, and yada, yada, yada. Which, interestingly enough, this is a kind of a digression, but Little Red Riding Hood, for the subject matter of that video they're watching, that's kind of what Little Red Riding Hood is a warning about be careful, because there are these monsters that will try to take you, that are hungry for you. So I kind of thought that was interesting, that this guy in the video, in the film, wasn't quite exactly a wolf, but there's still this interaction. Because I'm like, yeah, that's what Little Red Riding Hood is about. Anyways, moving on. The video plays out, and then the next one plays on the same canister of film, and it's Sally. And the party guests recognize her. Oh, look who it is. It's Sally. Oh, I hardly recognized her with her clothes on. And this is the first moment that Richard realizes that Greta knows her, because, she's been sitting there kind of like in a daze, like as this Little Red Riding Hood video is playing on, just, and then all of a sudden it cuts to Sally, and she's like, Sally. And he sees it, and he's like, just kind of takes the film out. And then we have this interesting shift where Richard is now writing a new story. He's writing a whodunit, a murder mystery. And all of the recordings that Greta is receiving, that she is supposed to type out, are basically parallels of what is happening. So his new story is about this girl who goes to work for a powerful man, and she's there trying to find out what happened to her missing friend. And she thinks she's onto something. And then later he meets her, and he's like, what did you think of the new story? And Eleanor's like, new story? He's like, yeah, I'm writing a whodunit. Well, anyways, later on, Eleanora and Richard leave, and Greta takes this opportunity to do some snooping. She takes a key, I believe, and she starts kind of going around the property, and I think she goes into like a basement area, and she finds a photograph, like a Polaroid, well, a photograph. It's mostly burned around the edges, but it's of Sally. And then we get a flashback of Greta and Sally naked under a waterfall, exploring each other, kissing, a lot of wonderful little pet touches around each other's faces, and it seems more romantic than the previous lesbian scene we had with Rosalba, Neri, and Barbara Bouchet. This one with Barbara Bouchet and Patrizia Viotti is like, I prefer this one, because I think I like Patrizia Viotti, and then they're both in slow motion. But it's interesting because the first one is like sensual sex, lust, and this one is more of love. There's more of a connection between these two women. They're looking at they're making eye contact, and there's that hesitation in them with doing anything. Whereas the other one, it was like Barbara Bouchet is like on the bed, like she's drugged, and she's like, her eyes are kind of closed, and Rosalba Neri is way more predatory. And this other one, it's more equal, it's mutual. Then she gets locked in the basement. I believe the butler comes by and I think he just locks her in, but she escapes out. Now Richard and Eleanora are coming back. They're right there, so she has to rush back in, hide the key, and Richard finds the key, and I think he starts to suspect that something is up. And then the second instance of his new story that she begins to type out is him talking about the murder of the girl, so it's essentially, in essence, sort of, if you view it this way, a confession of how he got rid of Sally. But this is all in the context of this story he's writing, which, funny enough, if he's writing a whodunit, wouldn't that reveal who the killer is? Anyways, so in this flashback, or this dramatization is more accurate, I guess, because we don't know if this is true or not, we see a man who is Richard leading a boat out through the lagoons, and he's got a dead, naked Sally in the boat, and she's got bruises around her throat. And then he stops as a motorboat goes by, binds her legs, and tosses her in the water. And I gotta say this real quick, Patrizia Viotti, she seems to have gone through a lot in her short life, and she was in a lot of movies this year, and I don't know how, she did all the stuff that she was asked of, at least is what we know of for this movie, but I gotta give her, kudos, because I don't know how comfortable she was with everything. She had to do a lot of, SV type scenes. There's a lot of the lesbian scenes, and then there's this part where she literally gets tossed off of a boat into a lagoon, and it's like you're getting thrown into real nature water in the middle of a swampy area. So kudos to her for doing a lot of the everything that was demanded of her. And at the end of this scene, where we cut back then to Greta as she is listening to it, it's beautifully framed, beautifully shot. There is a light emanating through the tape recorder that's just hitting her face, and so she's sitting in mostly darkness, and you've got a light going across her face, and you can see the wheel of the machine spinning. Great shot. I wonder if they had to kind of force that, because I doubt that machine actually gives off that sort of light to bathe her. Well, the next scene, again, she's left alone. She goes out walking, and she comes across the fisherman hut. She goes inside, and suddenly Rocco shows up. She's scared, but he tries to, he doesn't speak much. So this is something I kind of neglected to say, but we learn it in this moment, so it's fine. Rocco is the stereotypical character you would see in an old movie like this, like 60s, 70s, whatever, where they might call him simple. They might say, in fact, Rosalba Neri says, he has the body of a man, but the mind of a child. And so they're doing the of mice and men thing, where this guy is not all there mentally, but he's also hulking. So it's also something they did in Looney Tunes a lot, with the person grabbing the cat and being like, "Oh, pretty cat." So they're setting Rocco up to be this potential danger, and he has an eel, and he offers her eel, and she's like, "Oh, I've never had it." And this is a scene, I will say, for some people who don't like seeing violence who are absolutely put off by violence towards animals in movies, whether it is real or if it's fake. This is real. So you watch Rocco hold this eel down and nail its tail to the table, and then he essentially eviscerates it, and he's just cuts it open, fillets it, and he starts cutting pieces off for her, and she's like, no, and then he cuts himself with the knife accidentally, and she goes to his aid, and she helps him bandage it, helps him wrap it, and so they form this little connection. And then we have this scene around the fireplace. Sandro is there, and it's dark. It's just, the whole scene is just illuminated by the fire, and Richard has a rifle, and suddenly Eleanora starts having this weird episode. So he maybe there's a presence. The movie goes gothic for a hot second. This scene, it's very, very gothic. He opens the window, sets the rifle down. They go to her, and he mentions that what does he say? Something like she senses things or something. And then they turn over, and the rifle is gone. Okay. Not sure how that happened, but she's Eleanor is like in a state, and she's kind of babbling, and she's trying to say something. They don't know what she's getting, what's happening, and so they take her to bed, I believe. But Richard sticks around to talk to Greta, tell her about, phenomenons exists, and then the next scene we have is them going out hunting. And so we have two boats. In one of these little boats is Sandro and Eleanora, and the other one is Richard and Greta. And so they're shooting at waterfowl. They're shooting at birds. And Eleanora is a great shot. That's something they kind of had set up, is that, oh yeah, she's a total marksman. So Richard is trying to help out Greta, and he's like, okay, so when, like, I'll tell you when, and then stand up and shoot. And she goes to stand up and shoot, and she kind of rocks in the boat, whoa, and her gun doesn't go off. And he's just like, okay, all right, okay, bad idea. How about you get onto the land and try from there. We'll continue on the boat. Okay, so now she's on the land. It's very swampy, very murky. She again tries to shoot, and the gun does not go off. And then suddenly, Eleanora starts shooting at her, and Sandro. They're both kind of shooting at her. And at first you're thinking, okay, this might be a mistake, but they keep shooting at her, and she's running, and they're kind of following her in the boat. And suddenly Greta, all of a sudden we go into an old school Old West movie, because Greta lands in she lands in a bog, but for all intents and purposes, it's quicksand. And she's trying to get out. Suddenly we see Commissioner Antonelli show up. And where were you? How did you know to be here? So she must have been communicating with him. He tries to get her out, tries to throw his jacket to pull her out. It's not working. All of a sudden, Richard is there. Richard, plays the good guy, tosses one of his rifles over so that he can use the rifle butt for her to grab onto to pull her out. Then we have the scene where she's in bed. She's talking to Commissioner Antonelli, like, thank God you were there. And she's like, they were trying to kill me. They gave me a gun that didn't work, and they tried shooting at me. And he warns her, like, these are serious allegations. You understand what you're saying? And Richard comes in the room. Antonelli sort of brings up they bring up to Richard that the gun wouldn't fire. And he said, oh, well, that was probably my mistake for not warning you that when you load these guns, they have a feature that they automatically are, the safety is on. Did you turn the safety off? Oh, well, see, that's what happened, was the safety was locked on. Okay. Well, things go on. We have a scene in Venice with Richard and Eleanora. We have a scene with Greta and the butler and Antonelli. And then we get the third recording that she's listening to. And again, this is kind of a bit of a confession. So we get a dramatization of this scene where Richard is explaining what happened to this girl, aka Sally, and how she was starting to be sort of taken, didn't know, taken by the aura, the group, so to speak. She was becoming one of them. She was getting really taken with these wild sex parties or whatever, which, funny enough, we don't actually ever really see anything crazy. It's always just kind of implied that there's these orgies or whatever happening. Well, we don't see anything, but in this dramatization, we see Sally like naked, like at the foot of Richard, and as he's watching Sandro and his wife Eleanora kind of getting it on. Then we have this scene at a poolside where Greta wants to know what happened, and she tells him, like, I'm dying to know what happened to Sally. He confesses to her, or maybe he's not. But what he tells her is that there was a night that he went out, and from what his understanding is that Eleanora was doing like target practice, and she noticed Rocco chopping wood through her scope, and she was really kind of taken with him, and so she invited him over that night. And so it was Rocco, Eleanora, and Sally, and they had music on, they're drinking, and this scene is Patrizia Viotti is just kind of dancing with a cigarette. She looked good. And they start kind of, seducing Rocco, giving him more alcohol. Probably not the best idea to be giving this guy alcohol, but he takes Eleanora on the couch, and they kind of are getting it on. Again, it's not very graphic. He's got his pants on, but he's on top of her. The song kind of ends, and so Sally just kind of, she's just been in this weird drug-fueled thing, so she kind of like lays on the ground as the song comes to an end, and then Rocco gets over the couch, looks up and sees her, and he, gets down beside her, grabs her by the neck, puts his other hand behind her neck and pulls her up and starts kissing her. And then very quickly becomes aggressive, and she starts freaking out, and she starts calling for Eleanora to help her. Eleanora is looking over, watching them, and she kind of laughs, thinking it's funny. And then really quickly she realizes, oh my God, get off of her. Stop it. And she tries to fight Rocco off. Rocco pushes her off, and then he goes to Sally, and she's hiding by the fireplace, grabs the fireplace poker, tries to defend herself. This just, offends him, and he strangles her. And we cut back, and yeah, he says that's apparently what happened. When I got there, Rocco was gone, Eleanora was unconscious, and Sally was dead. They kind of have this bonding moment. And so then we cut to later that night, and Greta is in bed. Richard is kind of just having a drink, and then she gets out of bed, and they kind of meet, and they start kissing, and then he comes into bed with her, and we have this love scene, and Eleanora walks by, and she kind of looks in and just closes the door. I mean, these two are sharing, each other all the time, so it doesn't seem like it's a bad thing. Anyways, then we have this brief scene with Commissioner Antonelli and some other policemen, and they found a body in the lagoon. They don't know who yet. All they know is it's a young woman. She seems to have been here since last December, which is around the time when Sally went missing. And then Richard is leaving. He's leaving on a train. Greta sees him off, and Commissioner Antonelli happens to be there too. And he speaks briefly with Greta and tells her, we found a body. We're still examining that. We don't know for sure, but we did find a body. That night at the villa, it's still Greta and Eleanora and the butler. And the butler starts kind of spying, and then he gets killed. He gets stabbed. We don't know by who, but we just see him get killed. Okay. Then the phone in Greta's room rings, and it's Eleanora, and she says, hey, come to the study. Come to this room. We want to see you. She goes in there, and Rocco's there with Eleanora, and they try to give her alcohol, and at this point Rocco's already intoxicated, and he's kind of putting the moves on her, but she doesn't want this at all, and she tries to fight him off. She tries to run out, and this door is locked, and then Richard comes in. And he explains to her how, yes, I set this all up. There was something he had said earlier about how he was very intrigued about writing the perfect murder mystery, and so you get the idea that he's writing it in real life. He had faked him getting on the train and leaving. That was all intentional, and the commissioner saw it, so he has the perfect alibi, and he rushed back here, and they are going to kill Greta the same way that Sally was killed, and they are going to get away with it. And he knows that the police found a body, so he needs to get rid of Greta so she can't corroborate any information and help put him away, especially because of what he told her. Well, they just get Rocco more drunk and try to get him to kill Greta, to have his way with her and kill her. And she eventually gets through with him. She sees that his finger's still bandaged, and she makes a callback to it and reminds him of it. And he suddenly starts remembering, she was nice to me. I don't want to do something to her that's going to hurt her. And now they turn on Rocco. They're like, what are you doing? Just take her, you stupid animal. And they start getting violent with him, and he throws Eleanora, and she hits the fireplace mantle and cracks her head and starts bleeding out. And then Richard goes to attack him. Rocco stabs Richard with a knife, and now he's dead. And then in the last minute and a half or so, the commissioner is seeing Greta off as she gets on a train and leaves, and he gets her a gift. She leaves, and he says, oh, by the way, the body we found was not Sally's, but it's a good thing that Richard didn't know that, because who knows what might have happened. And that's the last line, and it ends. So that's the plot. And again, I'm so sorry for talking, but I mean, I literally was just telling you what happened, and that's the movie. But yes, I really, really enjoyed this movie. Just like the other movies I watched around the same time as I did the Forgotten Giallo films, The Two Faces of Fear, and then Amuck, and then Eye in the Labyrinth. I watched them all initially very quickly and was kind of in and out of watching. I was screen recording them at the time, and when I'm doing that, I can't really pause it because it's going to then have a pause in the screen recording. But I was initially watching them at work. There were times where I had to do something else, come back, and I'm like, I'm trying to follow along. And so I did watch all of these movies then a second time. I was able to follow along. I liked them more. And then I gave them a third viewing also. And I'm so glad I did, because I really enjoyed all of these movies more and more and more. The more I rewatched them, the more I got more pulled in, and there was more information that I never caught that line. I must have been looking away for a second, or I just didn't catch that line. Maybe my mind was somewhere else. But yeah, so Amuck, Arrow, Vinegar Syndrome, somebody. In terms of a US release, it's been a little difficult for me to find Amuck. Let me actually even try again right now. Yeah, it's 88 films, but as far as I can tell, it's region B. And this is what I mean, as I've said, with how something ends up in the Forgotten Giallo films, or if it gets covered with a Jolly Tally, is there a US Blu-ray release of the movie? If it's even an old one, or even some DVDs, give me one of these big distributors that do Giallo films. But if it's some random obscure DVD that whatever, I'm like, okay, well, the movie obviously wasn't successful enough to get picked up again. There's actually a lot of reasons why it may have not get picked up. It may be in copyright hell. Who knows? But Amuck definitely deserves. I mean, it does have a restoration, but give us a good US release. Like I said, I might be wrong, but from what I just searched, I could not find a US release. I could only find region B. And I try to avoid collecting foreign to the US discs, because they don't always play in our players. That's kind of the reason with the regions. Stupid. I don't know. Anyways, yes, I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say about Amuck. I'll say this. Also, Patrizia Viotti, I gave her some crap in Death Falls Lightly. I made a joke that she cannot act. Well, she can act in this movie. So yeah, maybe it was just the role, maybe it was the timing, I don't know, but this movie was definitely a step up for her. This movie I'm interested to watch Smile Before Death. Some people have said it's as good as Amuck, or it's good too, but not as good. So I'm really curious to watch that one, because Amuck was pretty damn good. I'm not sure if it's going to be in my top 10 for 1972, but it might. So anyways, leave your thoughts on the movie. Have you seen Amuck? It is on YouTube. If you just type in Amuck 1972, channel is World of Cinema. So that's Amuck, and then in parentheses 1972, or Alla, ricerca del piacere. I still am not great with reading Italian without hearing a pronunciation first. That's, like I said, the only thing I can really do that with is German. Yes, have you seen Amuck? If you haven't, I really implore you to check it out and let me know what you think. I think most of you will enjoy it. It's certainly got that charm of the lesser known Giallo films, but it's also got that allure, I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for words, but yes, I really did enjoy this movie. Leave any questions, thoughts, curiosities, or concerns, and I will do my best to get back to you. Thank you. This is Tanner Leeser for The King in Giallo, and nothing else. I'll see you next time.
You're too much. Did you hear that? I said, poor old thing. He starved out, and Guido said, too much riding for that hood.